Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. So in this video, I wanted to make a quick demo on how to make a neuron field in Blender. So I was on a project recently where we had to do a neuron field and turn it around in like a day. So we had really no time to do it. And I found some cool stuff you can do in Blender really fast. So we're gonna do a neuron field to kind of show some of that stuff. So usually the first thing I do whenever I'm starting any kind of project is find reference. So with the neuron field, what I've been kind of discovering is that there's a lot of really CG stuff out there, like the Science Channel, like they always have, the visualizations and stuff, and that's kind of where you see some of this more traditional things. What I try to do is find some real photography, if you can, if the thing you're making is based in real life. Try to find that first maybe and see what you can get from that. You can see here that this is already looking a lot more organic. There's a little bit more texture. You can get the idea of some of the materials a little bit more. Here it's very stiff, right? You kind of just have a ball with these kind of pointy noodles coming out. So that's kind of my approach, is see what real life has to offer and what you can learn from that, and then also maybe look at some artistic interpretations and see how that can inspire your art direction. So we got some of our reference here, and I think we're gonna do something like this, where it's a little bit more like noodly, a little bit more organic. So we're gonna put that aside, and we're gonna sculpt this in ZBrush. Now, of course, you can sculpt this in Blender. Blender's perfectly capable of doing this kind of thing. I'm just more comfortable in ZBrush, so we're gonna do that. And I have the original sculpt that we used, and let's just take a look at this. So kind of the idea we're going for here is trying to create like a little neuron pack, like a little package of neurons, and you want it to have a lot of variation. And the point of this is so you can get a lot of different camera angles and it looks like a different neuron completely. And the benefit of doing something like this is that you don't need to make more than one. You can just take this OBJ and then duplicate it, a million times, and then it looks like you have just a bunch of different neurons. So that's kind of the goal here, is you just want to make it look at as much variation as possible, so that it doesn't look stiff, it doesn't look like you're repeating things, and you can just make one and then duplicate it over and over again. So kind of the process of making this one here is, again, kind of taking the reference we saw. We'll just take the sphere and let me polymesh, and we'll give it a quick dynamesh. Okay, and then you can do something really basic like the snake hook, and then you're kind of just doing stuff like this, creating these type things. Watch out, losing some of the geometry. Kind of like that. Like, that's pretty good. And then maybe redynamesh. And then what I kind of did here is with this one, is I wanted to add a little bit of bump to the surface, because you want it to feel like it has some kind of organic bumpiness, like there's some texture there. So kind of just would go in, and if we're going back to this example here, maybe just take your classic, we can just do the standard brush actually, bring this down, and then you kind of just want to give it some rough surface, some blemishes, just to kind of roughen it up, making it look a little bit more real, organic, add some variation, that type thing. Yeah, so just really, pretty basic stuff, honestly. And then when you kind of got this, what we would do is we would just control and drag out a copy of this. And you kind of want to line up these little noodly bits so that they kind of match. And the idea is you're trying to make it look like, oh, these are connected. These are all kind of interlacing neurons. They're all connected in some way. Oops. So we'll go back to our brush, and then I'll clear the mask and then redynamesh just to connect that up. And then you're going to go in here, maybe inflate that, smooth it out. Oops. Just like that. And then repeat. So you kind of have, again, just kind of like a little tiny network of neurons. Add some variation in here. Turn sculptures off. There we go. So that's kind of what this process is. So you do that until you get a result that you're happy with, which was this right here. And then we're going to export this and bring it into our software package. So we're going to bring it into Blender. And the first thing I would recommend before doing that is bringing the resolution down. I'm not sure what happened there. So a good thing to do is to do the decimation master, just to lower the resolution, because right now we're at I think we're at like 300,000. Yeah, so I mean that's quite a lot. If you're bringing that into a software package, you generally don't want to have that much. So the more you can bring it down, the better. So we'll just decimate that and then export it and bring it into another software package. So we're done with that. We've exported it and we brought it into Blender. And usually the first thing that I like to do is I'll go select the geometry and then shade smooth. It just gets rid of those planar edges and the faces, and it kind of, you can get a little bit more leeway the closer you get with the camera, so you can get a little bit, you can kind of sneak by without having too much detail there. So now we can start having some fun with the way this neuron field works. So when we were looking at a reference before, you can kind of see that in these more CG examples, they have these kind of light that trails on these little noodles. And to be honest, I don't think this is actually how they look in real life. I think they just look like this, and you don't really see the visual representation of like the information passing through. But we want to create this effect, right, where we have this light that kind of trails through these noodle connections. And you can get that really cool effect about, oh, you got these lights going everywhere, and the neuron field is kind of like pulsating a little bit. So that's the effect we're trying to make. And there's actually a really fast way to go about this. And basically all we're going to do is we're going to, let's just add a light. We're going to add a point light. And to this point light, we're going to add object constraint, and we're going to do a shrink wrap. And the target, we're going to make the neuron sculpt. Basically what that's going to do is it's going to stick it to the neuron sculpt. So no matter how we try to manipulate this, it's going to stick to the surface of the neuron sculpt. And we can really take advantage of this. So if we wanted to, let's say, and I've already done it here, so I can just get rid of this one, but you can basically animate a lamp along one of these little trails here. So when we go into our rendered view, our lights, you can see I've already added some materials and things. You can start to get this effect of the little pulsating light going through the neurons. Now the benefit of this is that when you have this all done, you've attached the light to the geometry, you can create what is called a collection. Basically what a collection is it's just an instance of your geometry and whatever you have in that collection. So I actually already have one here, but you can just take all this, you can do right click and then move to collection, and it's going to ask new collection or an existing one. I already have one here, but in your case you would do a new collection. So when you have that there, you can basically go to add collection instance, and then you can press neuron, and now you have this here, and it keeps your animation as well, right? So if we script through our timeline, we can see it keeps that animation. All we have to do with this is just rotate it. We could even scale it up or down, and now you have, just by looking almost any direction, it looks like it's a completely different neuron, right? So if we script through the timeline, we get that as well. So that's kind of how you create that effect. In terms of materials, if we go back to our geometry, there's just some really basic materials on this, honestly. And we're doing this in Eevee, so we're keeping the bloom and we're adding some, we're doing it to be quick, right? So it's not meant to be extremely pretty. It's more meant to be just get a quick turnaround and get something that looks all right. So in terms of the materials, just to see what we have here, tons of subsurface, right? Just crank that up, because if we look at our reference, these are pretty tiny. Small organic objects tend to be somewhat translucent. So that's kind of the basis for having some subsurface in there. I just added, let's go to our, let's see, shading. You can see that we have this here. So just some honestly really basic materials. There's a bump with a noise texture attached to it. Again, another noise, hue and saturation, then some RGB curves. Just turned down the blue, cranked up the red, a little bit of green to give it this kind of red fleshy kind of look. And honestly, that's pretty much it. A little bit of specular. You can add that if you want or not. And there you go. All you got to do is bring your object in, attach those lights, make a collection, and then duplicate it as many times as you want, and you got a neuron field going. And if we scrub through our timeline, let's go to the animation, we can see we got our neuron field going. So yeah, really quick way to make that. It's not extremely pretty, but it's fast and it looks all right. So, and maybe you can use that technique for something else. I think it's the attaching a light to an object and just kind of moving it while it sticks to the surface. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you could do with that. So a lot of different ways. If you have any cool, fun things that you found you can do with that, send them over. I'd love to see it. I hope this video was helpful, and thank you guys for sticking around. I'll see you in the next video.